Welcome to CS Office Hours. Let me go ahead and introduce the topic for today. It is change management best practices for customer advocacy programs. And we have Kyle Yantis, who is from Slap 5, which is a customer marketing application. And he has put together some really great resources that he's going to share and set us up for this conversation. So I'm just going to stop here sharing for a second. So Kyle, wave hello.
Hey everybody, nice to see y'all.
All right. Do you want to just say real quick, what do we even mean by customer advocacy or customer marketing? What have you been doing? Why do you do it? Anything?
Sure.
Give them some sense of why I asked Kyle, because Kyle is really awesome, folks. I know that you're going to really enjoy this session. He set up some really great resources for us to check out.
Awesome. Well, I guess quick background. I'm a SaaS sales guy, ex-sales guy, turned to a customer marketer, and now I'm a customer success manager for a vendor in that space. So I've also been a purchaser of a lot of things. So I'm the full cycle of all the angles of clients that we're trying to serve, lived it in day-to-day life. And what got me into customer marketing really is just how efficient it made my life as a sales rep, how easy it was for me to hit quota, but also how easy it was for me to enable the ecosystems around the customers that I was creating as well. I was also compensated on their renewals. So I think it's very timely these days because we're all sort of facing some economic headwinds. It's getting more and more expensive to acquire clients. And we're also in an age where trust of our client bases is at an all-time low. So by leading with storytelling, by leading with best practices that comes from the words of your successful client and not yourselves, not the companies you work for, really easy way to build trust in the marketplace and ease the internal workload as well. You don't have to make up the answers when people are living the day-to-day life outside of your organizations. They can tell you how it is. So, yeah.
All right. Well, we're just going to dig in real quick and get everybody set up for what we're talking about today. And I'm really excited about it for, kind of all those various reasons we've been sort of talking about. I am just trying to, I want to make it so I can see people. So I'm just setting it up here. Okay. So really, when you think about customer advocacy, it's a marriage between marketing and customer success, right? And we've talked in the past about customer-led growth, which is a customer-centric approach to business. But it's something where if you're in CS, you want to think about how customer advocacy can support the whole process, right? And if you have current customers, they can be referrals for sales, sure. They can be on webinars that help prospects, sure. But they can also help your current customers, right? When you take a look at the best practices that your current customers are doing and you work with them to help give sort of a light at the end of the tunnel for onboarding and what they're going to be able to do with the product once you onboard, right? Like you can highlight your customers and show that they are really exhibiting best practices, that they're thought leaders in the field, and it can help with onboarding, renewals, and your expansions, right? It helps. I don't know, Kyle, do you want to sort of jump in a little bit from kind of what we were talking about on this slide?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, humans are not only storytellers, but ultimately story believers. A lot of us have fallen into the traps of leading with sort of challenge, solution, results. It's very business forward. It can be very isolating, especially when a lot of people are working remotely. And so leading with stories is a great way to garner engagement, but also think about your best customers. But you're always trying to build on the relationship that you have with them. And if somebody has done the best adoption rates, they're really successful with your solutions. Sometimes you can feel stuck of how do I keep this train moving? And by making them feel needed as thought leaders, but also putting them on a bit of a pedestal, that's a way to sort of give back, offer ways to help them be successful in their careers, and put the spotlight on them in a great way to help them and yourself at the same time.
Okay, so that's the why. But what I really want to share with you is a bit more behind the scenes of this. What do you call it? The assessment that Kyle set up. So let's dig in a little bit more. So what advocacy program, right? And the way you are bringing the customer into the company ecosystem, right? That's really what you're doing when you're creating advocates. You're saying, welcome, come be part of our family, be a part of us, right? Now you're an advocate for us and this product that you love. You love our company, we love you, come be a part of us, right? Your belonging is one of those key things that we all want. Go ahead and sort of dig into
to that point, it's a bit of an inner circle, right? There's in order for a business to work efficiently, normally there's a lot less CSMs than clients. And inviting an exclusive group into that inner circle really enables a different relationship, a different mindset, but one that requires you to consider what's in it for each person in that relationship. And that's what we have highlighted in the middle of this slide here, right? Ultimately, like I mentioned before, a company is looking to build trust and operationalize accountability. Your customer, who you're trying to work with in the day-to-day business, is trying to learn best practices. Your advocate wants to be a thought leader. It's important when considering these ecosystems that are either formal or informal, everybody comes to the table with asking the question, what's in it for me? And you all have to consider each other's perspective in order for that relationship to be successful, and leading with others in mind before themselves.
And also, when you think about all the different ways that your customers can participate in an advocacy program, that is also part of the WIFM. Like who you get involved in a customer advisory board, the executives, the, people who are the decision makers, right? Why would they want to be a part of a customer advisory board? Who you have involved in your product advisory board, maybe people who are more technical, or, your champions, end users, why would they want to be involved in a product advisory board? Who is speaking in your webinars? In each of those cases, you can apply what's in it for the people who are participating, and also what you're looking for, as a company, right? And then all of the other people who might then benefit from those activities and what's in it for them. All right, now this is the assessment, and I know it looks like a lot of squiggly lines, but there is a method to this madness. Kyle, walk us through it.
There is, yeah. So this is about 2 years of day in the life distilled onto a sheet and 7 questions. Some of you actually might recognize these 7 questions that have been sort of reworded to this specific scenario, but they're intended where you can apply sort of a tactical assessment. So a reference request process. As CSMs, you all probably are getting pinged consistently from all kinds of angles. Hey, can I talk to X, Y, and Z customer? I really need a reference for this sales call. It might be a sales rep directly pinging you on Slack or email or text. So it can be very specific. Or you can ask yourself these same 7 questions on just the overall theory around customer advocacy and who owns your customer advocacy program. Typically, it's a customer marketer in the SaaS world, but you can sort of ask yourself these 7 questions. It goes from the top down. And as you're going through this assessment, you're going to have 2 answers, yes or no. Ideally, you'll kind of want to follow the golden line here to get down to the bottom where customer-led growth is an organizational imperative. So that means absolutely everybody in the company starts their day asking the question, what's in it for the customer? So if you're a product marketer, you're going to ask, is my marketing going to help bring the ideal customer into our profile of clients? If you're a CSM, you're going to be asking, how can I bring advocates into a program to better flesh out best practices, to better help us build a roadmap that meets the needs of our clients, all of that. So you're going to go down and hopefully answer yes to a lot of things, but also, like any assessment model, the goal is to identify points of growth. So as you get to no's, you may
Well, when
stop
you
short.
say points of growth, you mean where
Yep.
your no's are? If you
Exactly.
answer no, that's an opportunity for growth.
Precisely. Yep.
Right.
And
so let's just, because this is kind of hard to take in, and you can download, and I just put the slides and resources again, so you can look at each question as you go when you look at it in more detail. But let's, on the next slide, we have these blue, green, purple, red, yellow, like what all of those mean. Let's dig into what they mean. Is that cool?
sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. So this is an additive model, right? So if you are ad hoc, then you can also then, add in and be transactional, right? Like you go ahead, Kyle, it's yours. You go.
One evolves to the next. Yep.
Yes.
So everybody
it
starts
evolves. Oh, okay.
at
So I'm
an
going to
ad
say it.
hoc level.
So
Yep.
instead of additive, I'm going to say evolutionary model. How about
There
that?
you go. Yep.
I like that. All right.
So everybody starts with an ad hoc program. It's disorganized, it's one-off, it's sort of tit for tat. If you write a nice review on my website, I'll give you a $20 Amazon gift card. Versus, well, actually that'd be transactional. But if ultimately what you're trying to get to is a place where your company switches from a reactive model to a proactive model. So I think a lot of companies sort of are at marketing-led, fiscally strategic level, where they're looking at, where do I need to improve my line of business? What new markets am I going after? And they're trying to churn out content to displace the need for live reference calls. And so a lot of that level of advocacy is sort of reactive to internal needs that are very short term. You're asking yourself quarter by quarter, what have I closed? What advocates were involved in those sales? What have I renewed or upsold? What advocates were involved in that? Versus turning to a proactive model, recognizing that you have a long-term relationship with your customer, and that sort of doing an ad hoc ask or a transactional ask with your client ultimately doesn't honor the relationship you're trying to build with them. It sort of decreases the value of that relationship by saying, I'm only in it for my need, which is the point of advocacy, versus if you're in it for the long haul of the relationship, you're going to say, you as the client, I want to make you the thought leader. I want to make you successful first. And then by them being the thought leader, that automatically propagates case studies, event speakers, video recorded references, things of that nature, which I don't think a lot of organizations are wired for patience in that. They're very focused on hitting quarterly earnings and things like that. So no, stave off for a quarter or two, play the long game, and it'll pay dividends.
Well, and that gets to Sandy's question over in the chat, right? When there's a conflict between the KPIs that you've set up for CSMs to come and get, to create advocates, let's say, right? Or marketing needs to create so many advocates. But if it's not, if the customer really isn't ready to be an advocate, right? Is that part of what your question is, Sandy, there? Did you want to come off mute or, yeah?
Sure, sure. I just was curious kind of how have you addressed it in the past? Because I think there's especially when you're trying to pivot the culture to be more customer centric and doing right with the customer, but there are some legacy KPIs or even current KPIs that may still be in conflict, just like an example that Jan shared. So I was curious, as a CS contributor, individual contributor, or CS leader, kind of what's been your experience, what's worked for you?
Yeah, so I find a lot of KPIs are usually developed in silos. So an organization is only considering what do they have direct control over, and that's what has formed legacy performance indicators. What I've always advised my clients to do, and what I've built in past programs as an advocacy manager, was a governance committee. Ultimately, what needs to happen is, like you mentioned, a culture change. And that only happens when leadership is bought in. And so I've always told and taught individual contributors to sort of start heading up the ladder with this concern of the disconnect. And usually once these committees meet over the course of 2 to 3 months, over the course of a quarter, they can quickly identify that KPIs versus desired outcomes are not actually aligned, and those changes can be made. KPIs are something that people created. They created their own problem so they can solve out of it as well.
Does that resonate, Sandy?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah. And so then I think if you were looking ahead at the last one, you have the long range sort of advocacy program where you're mission oriented, you're thinking about what's in it for everyone, right? And so you want to think about how you set it up so that there's something in it for everyone. And even the KPIs then are organically going to reflect that as well. Jason, or I think you also go by Jay, your question over in the chat is, how receptive, Kyle, do you see senior leadership in developing customer advocacy programs when they don't exist already? And what kind of infrastructure do you need to set them up? Oh, which reminds me, I will include later some, 2 blog pieces that I wrote about that too. But yeah, go ahead, Kyle.
Awesome. Yeah, and I've also linked some books in the resources tab as well that go through some real world examples from the upper echelons, think like AAA or Amazon, that do things extremely well, very customer focused, all the way to grassroots level like CNC machiners in the Midwest that are trying to start up advocacy programs and gain business through that. But typically, the reason, or sort of the why leadership will actually start a customer advocacy program is because they see either a slip in renewal rates or some sort of lost opportunity. It tends to be, again, reactionary, like most things in business, unfortunately, right? It's reactionary, but that moment of reaction can be harnessed to sort of pivot, steer the ship, and turn it to be reactive, or sorry, proactive, away from reactive. And so usually what you're trying to do is bolster your go-to-market motion. You're trying to either reduce the time to close, you're trying to jump into a new market, all things that are, like I mentioned, you're trying to build trust. So that happens when you're like, oh, we don't have real stories to tell, or our stories are very dry, or they're old. And the sort of pivot moment can happen with a lot of things. You can have turnover, your senior VP of sales can turn over, so you have a change in sales methodology that's more story focused, and then you realize everything's old. C-suite and marketing leaves, they realize everything's old. It tends to be, like I mentioned, reactive.
Let me just share one more time so I can set everybody up for the questions.
And the other tool was, the other question, Kyle, was about tools, right? And
Oh, there was
right,
another
it doesn't
question.
have to be super, super difficult to get started, right?
No,
You can
it
start with
really
a
doesn't.
spreadsheet if you want to.
Right.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
And actually, Christine, you make a great point, and that's an article that I'll share in the chat when we come back and put it over in Slack as well. I wrote it over for the Success League blog. This is one that I wrote like over a year ago, where basically it's called Customer Success Advocacy Umbrellas. And basically the idea is start with what you have, but add in the WIFM, give it purpose, like think about why they're getting involved and help them with some sort of progression and reason to get involved. And you can just start with what you have now, which usually is at least trying to get sales references, and you're doing webinars. Like you're doing at least those two things usually at any organization, because the CEO wants a sales reference almost immediately from day one of starting the company, right? When they are the first salesperson, when they're the founder kind of thing, right? And so, all of those things, it naturally happens. It's naturally, when you look back at kind of like what it is, it's just usually just ad hoc, right? It's usually just disorganized advocacy. And if at the very least you put an umbrella over it and give it some organization, then you get to graduate to transactional. Yay, level 2, just that easy. All right, so we're gonna do a breakout session. We'll do that for 20 minutes. Have you advocated for a product or a vendor? Do you have a formal advocacy program? If so, who owns it? And what kinds of strategies have you implemented to gather stories, share them, develop KPIs, any of those types of things? That's kind of what we're going to be talking about. That is already on the breakout question at the top. So you have that. And then just also, if you've downloaded this, there's also various resources, and I will add in the chat the 2 articles I've written about it. But anyway, just want to be sure that you have those resources as well. So we'll go ahead and go to the breakout rooms. Okay, so I think we have everybody back. So tell us about this 2 or 3-sided coin. Yeah, from, I think it was, what is that, group 7, Gary?
Yeah.
Christine, you go first.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were talking about what your advocacy program already looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And I started mine as a customer event, right? So it happens through community, and everybody has milestones to reach for gamification. And once they hit certain levels, they get swag or, Amazon gift cards, whatever. And then the end goal is to become a member of our product advisory board, separate from our customer advisory board, which is executives. But the product advisory board is usually practitioners, right? The people who are in the product most. And so that's what our program looks like. And we track referenceability and whether they partake in webinars, or they do my customer of the month program or whatever, right? They get all of these points toward the gamification, and they get badges, and they get to, I'm getting ready to tie their badges to their LinkedIn profiles, and all these cool things.
Nice.
Right? So it's going to be really cool. And then Gary came with the flip side of the coin.
So what we do, what we do is we sort of have a point system for all the advocacy activities that our customers do, but that point system goes to the customer CSM. And their job every quarter is to get a certain number of points in order to get 20% of their variable. And that's quarter on quarter. So you've got to identify who a potential reference could be, or get somebody to do a case study, or get them on stage, or whatever else. So very much ours is CSM led. And so what we realized is that we can actually do both. Like, you could actually get CSMs who find a customer, the customer does all the work, but the CSM also through that activity can potentially get their points and get recognized as well. So it can actually go, that's what we said, that's both sides of the coin, really. Like, you don't have to just be going down one channel. You can actually be getting your CSMs to drive these behaviors too, because sometimes you have customers who aren't actively involved in community or anything else, and you want them to be actively involved, so then they can by badging up, they can also then potentially as a CSM get recognized for doing the right thing there as well. So the program can sort of be looked at from both perspectives rather than in silos.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. And it's funny because I was thinking about that, Kyle, we didn't really dig in yet to the idea of like, because I was just teaching a compensation class. I was subbing for Russell over at Success League. It's a part of the CS leadership certification, and compensation can be KPIs and bonuses, like regular sort of like variable pay that can be paid out quarterly and stuff. But you could also do a contest, or you can also have, like
spiffs.
special, spiffs or bonuses, that, are just for that month, or some sort of thing like that, right? And so when you think about it, then there's a lot of different ways you can do it. And that would just be on the internal side. But yeah, so what you do for gamification, you can do gamification with lots of different folks, right? Awesome. What other kinds of things came up when folks were chatting? Anybody? We just had group 7. Do we want to go to group 1? Group 1 is who?
Yeah, I'll kind of call out Andrea because I told her I would. And no, it was fascinating the way that her company solves for this. Very similar, it sounds like, to what Christine was talking about. But Andrea, if you want to share.
Sure. So we do have a customer advocacy. It's a community, actually, a customer community, so that customers can talk amongst themselves about how they ask questions of each other. How do they handle general ledger? The company that I work for is HR payroll. So it's going to be payroll questions and HR questions and so forth. It is run by marketing. Marketing does ask them to do to reference for new prospects coming in, or clients that are looking to upgrade to a different module that they want to talk to someone who already has it. They'll start in that community. Now, as a CS manager, as a customer success person, we're responsible too for building our references, and not just, do we have a reference from each of the companies, but do we have depth? Do we have the VP, the HR manager, the payroll person? Do we have multiple people that can be referenced? We ask our clients to do things like, if we see them doing something fun, we'll ask them to write a paper. It's a case study. Case studies will scare people off. So we just ask them to do a paper. We'll do all the writing. We just want to interview you. You'll get to review it before it goes out to make sure that we've accurately captured what you're doing. So we do have a number of different ways that we tap into our clients to be advocates for us. And it works out well.
And I should also look, and I'll put it over in Slack as well. There's somebody that I follow on LinkedIn who is really, and Christine, you may know the person offhand, but there's somebody who's looking at innovative ways to do case studies. And I think that perhaps the days of long papers for case studies might be gone, right? Because who sits down to read the whole thing? But there might be ways to break them up into bite-sized pieces, or do articles or interviews, or shorter things that are more digestible. I don't know if there's anything that people want to share that, if that's bringing up something for someone. Videos, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, Jan, I was involved with, this is not something we talked about in our group, but it just sparked a memory for me. I was involved in the advisory board for, well, maybe advocacy group. I don't know. It was, they invited a whole bunch of different leaders, and some people on this call were probably a part of it too, for Catalyst customer-led growth group.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and they brought a number of us together, and the idea, Catalyst, I'm not actually a customer of Catalyst, but I'm a part of their mentorship program for mentoring CSMs with leaders, matching them with each other. And I feel like Catalyst is such a smart marketer for their platform, even though they have because of that, they have a whole lot of people following and very aware of Catalyst as a thought leader in customer success, even though I've yet to talk to anybody who has used Catalyst and actually really appreciates the product. Most people are connected to Catalyst because of their advocacy within the space. And so what they did for this advisory board is they brought us all together and gave us great tips on how to become thought leaders through LinkedIn, and gave us great content and ideas about content to post on LinkedIn, with the idea of increasing awareness for customer-led growth, which led to Catalyst as well. So it was kind of a win-win for them and for each of the members who were a part of the advisory board to kind of create buzz and turn in this marketing machine. So it was pretty obvious to anybody who was paying attention that, you know, that was the whole goal of this thing, was more buzz for Catalyst. But they invited thought leaders, and most of us participated, you know, because it was good for everybody.
Yep. I know that we're at time, but I can go a couple more minutes if others can. Is there something else that we should be sharing from the session, something that hasn't been brought up yet? I want to be sure that we get a chance to sort of let in on some of these. There's a lot of great notes over here. Group 2, group 3, sorry, I'll stop. Who wants to share something?
Hey, Jan, this is Sandy. Just one thing that came up from our group that I thought was really good is that we had asked questions about at what stage should companies start thinking about advocacy programs? And one that's very common that came up twice in our group is, what are the right companies to include in your advisory board? How do you know who is it, you know? So that would be interesting to further explore either here or on Slack.
Yeah, well, certainly, I think that another thing that we didn't mention, but if you're a very early stage company, you're better off calling it a lighthouse program. And a lighthouse program is actually meant to be for your early stage customers who are sort of, the idea is that they're lighting the way, right? They're engaging with you as very active early adopter companies. Okay, so that allows then, if you name these groups something other than CAB for customer advisory board or product advisory board, it allows things to sort of change over time. You can give it sort of a branded name, right? And then what happens is, as your needs and your company evolves and changes, and you actually have a group of executives that are big time executives that you're going to put in a really fancy customer advisory board program, then you can invite them without making somebody angry who was an early adopter, you know, executive or, you know, super user who's been part of your, you know, company, practically family, you know, from day one, but really isn't part of that elite group, right? And you can still make them feel special in some other group, right? So there's just those kinds of things to consider, you know, and might be another reason why you might brand some of these different groups. And then otherwise, since from the very beginning days, you need to have sales referrals and you're going to have people involved in webinars, just encourage you. I did post something about customer advisory board, you know, customer advisory umbrellas. Just think about how to position it and how to sort of make it intentional. So, because if you don't make it intentional and sort of an invitation to be part of the family, then it always ends up being, will you do this for me? I'm going to poke you. I'm going to poke you again. And if you think about how many times you poke somebody in the same spot, at first it doesn't really matter, right? But after a while, it kind of hurts and you kind of get a little upset. You know, they're still poking me. I'm getting this black and blue mark right here where they keep poking me. This hurts. Stop that. That's what they say. Instead of, you're a part of us. How can we help you? You're a part of a thought, you know, you're a thought leader, right? That feels very different. And the way that it feels is very important.
And the other thing is when you're starting up these programs is to make sure they have charters. So the definition of what the program is for is widely understood. And in those charters also include sort of length of term. Build in a revolving door where you can say, hey, you've been here for 2 years. Love the advice you've given us on this. For a cab, it would be what's our direction in 3 years, 5 years. But hey, we could really actually use some help on product. We're really suffering in this area. Do you mind working with Joe over here on our product team? Because I really think you might have some insights, but also XYZ person on your team might have insights. A really good way to do that.
I love that. I love that. Really sort of allows you to add that positioning in.
Yeah, because like any relationship, it's going to evolve over time. So you just need to give yourself those triggers for that evolution.
Oh, Christine, do you want to just share what you just posted in the chat?
Our cab has a 2-year term. And so when we started it last year, we initiated it with X number of members, and one person was an industry specialist, the rest are customers. And now this year we're doubling it in size with the additional members, and the first cohort will expire next year. And then the second cohort will expire after their 2-year term. So we're always refreshing every year with new members.
That's great. And then they don't feel like they've just signed on for life as well.
Right. And it's part of their membership agreement. It tells them that the membership is for 2 years. And
you're expected to renew so that you'll be on the cab for 2 years.
there is that. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, this is great. I really just love all the notes that you took and just all of the, what you brought today. Excited about everything that Kyle brought, and I really recommend you digging into the slides that he shared, and continue to share and ask questions over in Slack. And then next week, what is our topic for next week? Let me just go real quick, because even I don't have it all memorized. Oh, it's the 25th. I do. Seth Dovev is going to be here, and we're going to talk about communicating change internally and externally. And so, and then after that, it'll be August 1st somehow. I don't know how that happens, but and then August 1st, we're going to be talking about change management best practices for implementing and deploying a CS platform. And we're going to have the VP of CS from Tatango, Chris Dishman, and Christy Falteruso, the CCO from Client Success. So we've got some great stuff coming up, and just thank you so much, Kyle. Just what a fantastic day it was today. Really appreciated everything you shared with us.
Thank you for having me. I love how participatory this community is. It's always enjoyable.
Me too. Love it. Thank you, everybody, for contributing today. Awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good night.
Have a good one.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Success Hour, formerly known as CS Office Hours. We regularly put out new content, so to be the first to know, like this episode, tap that notification bell, hit that subscribe button, and we look forward to seeing you soon.